My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old. And for 6 months I thought I was losing my mind. One morning, I walked out my back door with a coffee in my hand, and I stopped dead. There were footprints in the mud, starting from my doorstep, leading straight into the woods. Bare feet. My size. I hadn't gone outside the night before. I was certain of that. But the prints were fresh. And they were mine. What I didn't know yet, what no one knew, was that I had proof. Hidden on a device no one knew existed. Footage that would change everything I thought I understood about myself. Before I tell you what actually happened, if you're new here, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below, where are you watching from? Let me take you back to the night before those footprints appeared, when everything still felt normal. The morning was cold. Mid-October. The kind of quiet where you hear your own breathing. Claire stepped off her back porch and her foot hit mud. She looked down. Then she looked up. A trail of bare footprints ran from her doorstep straight into the tree line. Perfectly spaced. Unhurried. Like someone who knew exactly where they were going. She wasn't wearing shoes. She looked at her own feet. Then back at the prints. Same narrow heel. Same slight inward turn on the left foot. Her foot. Her exact foot. She had not gone outside the night before. She remembered locking the door. She remembered the deadbolt clicking. She remembered going to bed. But the mud didn't care what she remembered. The prints were there. Fresh. Real. And they went deep into the woods and didn't come back. Claire had moved to that house 14 months earlier. After the divorce. After the city. After everything that had worn her down to almost nothing. The property sat at the end of a gravel road in rural Vermont. Nearest neighbor, half a mile away. Nearest town, 20 minutes by car. She had chosen it deliberately. The quiet. The distance. The woods that pressed right up against the back fence like a wall the rest of the world couldn't cross. She worked remotely. Graphic design. Her days were structured: coffee at 6. Work by 7. A walk along the fence line before dark. She knew that property. Every corner of it. She had walked it hundreds of times. She had no pets. No house guests. No reason for anyone or anything to be moving around outside her door at night. That's what made it impossible. She wasn't the kind of person things like this happened to. She was careful. Grounded. Rational. And now she was standing in cold mud, staring at her own footprints, going somewhere she had never chosen to go. She didn't follow them. Not yet. She just stood there and counted them. 14 prints. Starting at the base of the porch steps. Each one sinking deeper than the last, like whoever made them was picking up pace. The trail didn't wander. It didn't hesitate. It cut a straight line through the wet grass, through the gap in the back fence, and disappeared into the trees. Purposeful. Deliberate. Like a path walked 100 times before. She crouched down beside the third print. Pressed 2 fingers into the soil next to it. The depth matched. Fresh, made sometime in the last few hours. While she was asleep. While the house was locked and dark. She pulled out her phone. Took photos. Measured the length against her own foot right there in the mud. 11 centimeters wide at the ball. A slight drag on the right heel. Details you wouldn't notice unless you were looking. She was looking. And every detail matched her. Not approximately. Exactly. Which meant only one thing, and she wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. She went back inside. Made fresh coffee. Sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. She typed, "Can 2 people have identical footprints?" The answer came back fast. No. Not even identical twins. The pressure points, the arch depth, the toe spread, all unique. Like a fingerprint. So she tried another angle. A prank. Someone had made a cast of her foot somehow. Pressed it into the mud deliberately. She thought about who had access. Her ex-husband, 3 states away. Her sister hadn't visited in 4 months. Nobody had been inside that house in weeks. She tried sleepwalking next. She had never sleepwalked in her life. Not once. But she looked it up anyway. Sleepwalkers don't unlock deadbolts. Don't navigate steps in complete darkness without falling. Don't walk in straight lines into dense woodland. Each explanation she built, she tore down herself within minutes. By the time her coffee went cold, she had run out of rational answers. What was left wasn't rational at all. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a thought she didn't want was beginning to take shape. 3 days passed. She told herself it was a one-time thing. An anomaly. She checked the back fence every morning. Nothing. Then on the 4th morning, 2 sets of prints. Same size. Same foot. One trail going in. One trail coming back out. Whatever had gone into those woods had returned. And walked back into her house. She started noticing other things. The small outdoor mat beside the back door moved 18 inches to the left. A single twig snapped clean on the porch railing. Mud on the inside of the back doorstep that hadn't been there the night before. Then the smell. Just once. Standing in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, something drifted through the room. Damp earth. Pine sap. The exact smell of those woods after rain. Inside her house. Windows closed. Doors locked. She stood completely still for 4 minutes. Didn't move. Didn't call out. Just listened. And from somewhere beyond the tree line, just barely, she heard something that stopped her breathing entirely. A sound she recognized, but couldn't place. Not yet. On the 6th morning, she woke up, and the back door was unlocked. She had bolted it herself at 10 the night before. She remembered turning the key. Remembered testing the handle twice. It was unlocked. And there were fresh prints in the mud. She didn't go back inside. She didn't call anyone. She pulled on her boots right there on the porch over bare feet, still in her sleep clothes, and she walked to the fence line. Stopped. Looked at the trail disappearing between the trees. Then stepped through the gap. The woods swallowed the light immediately. 20 feet in, and the house behind her vanished. The trail was easy to follow, the ground still soft from overnight rain. Each print ahead of her was deep and clean. She counted her steps. Focused on that. 1, 2, 3. The trees pressed closer. The trail curved slightly left. She followed it. 40 steps in, she stopped. The prints ahead of her had changed. They were no longer walking. The spacing doubled. The depth increased sharply at the toes. Whatever had made these prints, whatever she had made, had started to run. She followed the running prints for another 30 steps. Then they stopped. Clean. No stumble. No collapse. Just stopped. In the center of a small clearing she had never seen before. And she had walked this property line 100 times. The clearing was roughly circular. Maybe 20 feet across. The ground inside it was flattened, grass pressed down in a wide, uneven ring. Like something had been moving in circles. For a long time. In the center, a rock. Large. Flat on top. And on it, 3 things arranged in a neat line. A dried wildflower. A small piece of torn fabric, blue cotton, faded. And a photograph. She picked up the photograph with 2 fingers. Her hands were shaking now. It was her. Taken from behind. Standing at her kitchen window. At night, the light inside making her clearly visible from outside. She was wearing the gray sweatshirt she had on right now. The photo was not recent. The edges were worn. The color slightly faded. Someone had been coming to this clearing for a long time. And they had been watching her long before she ever noticed the prints. She brought the photograph back inside. Set it on the kitchen table. Sat across from it for a long time. The sweatshirt she was wearing, she had owned it for 2 years. But it was faded now. The photo showed it less faded. Slightly brighter gray. Which meant the photo was older. Taken when the sweatshirt was newer. At least a year ago. She had only moved into this house 14 months ago. That landed like ice water. Someone had been in those woods within weeks of her arriving. Watching her before she had even unpacked. Before she knew the layout of her own kitchen. Then something else hit her. She pulled up her calendar app. Scrolled back 3 weeks. There were gaps. Evenings she had marked as nothing, no entries, no reminders, no activity. She did that sometimes when she had quiet nights. But she opened her step counter. Those same evenings, 4,000 steps. 5,000. Logged between midnight and 3 a.m. She had been walking. At night. Repeatedly. And she remembered none of it. Not a single step. She called her sister first. Described everything. The prints. The clearing. The photograph. The step counter. Her sister listened without interrupting. Then said quietly, carefully, "Claire, have you been sleeping properly? Since the divorce, you've been under a lot of stress." She hung up and called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out that afternoon. Walked the fence line. Looked at the mud. Looked at her. Asked if she had any history of anxiety. She showed him the photograph. He turned it over twice. Said it could have been taken by anyone from anywhere at any time. Said there was no crime he could document. Left his card on the kitchen counter and drove away. She stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the gravel road. Completely alone. With a photograph of herself taken from the dark. With a step counter full of walks she didn't remember. With a clearing in the woods no one else seemed to find alarming. But here is what the officer didn't see. What her sister didn't know. On the back of that photograph, written in pencil, in small careful letters, was a single word. Her name. And beneath it, a date. 3 days from now. That same evening she drove 40 minutes to the nearest hardware store. Bought 2 motion-activated cameras. Came home and mounted one above the back door. One pointing at the fence gap. Angled low. Capturing the ground. She tested both. Checked the night vision. Went to bed at 9 with her phone on the pillow. At 3:14 a.m. her phone buzzed. Motion detected. Back door camera. She sat up and opened the app with shaking hands. The footage was 12 seconds long. Night vision. Green-gray. Grainy at the edges. A figure stepped off the porch. Barefoot. Moving steadily. No hesitation. No looking around. The figure reached the fence gap and slipped through without slowing. And just before it disappeared into the tree line, it turned its head. Just slightly. Just enough. It was her. Same height. Same build. Same gray sweatshirt. Walking with her posture, her stride, her slight leftward lean. Eyes open. Completely awake looking. Completely asleep being. She watched the clip 4 times. Then sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and understood something that made everything worse. She wasn't being followed into those woods. She was leading herself there. And she had no idea why. She showed the footage to a doctor 3 days later. A neurologist her GP referred her to. He watched it twice. Asked her 6 questions. Then said a word she had never associated with herself. Dissociative. He said it the way doctors say words they have said 1,000 times, carefully, but without flinching. Dissociative episodes. A response to prolonged stress. To trauma that never fully processed. Her mind had been splitting off at night. A version of her that functioned, moved, navigated, while the part of her that remembered stayed completely offline. He said it had likely started around the time of the divorce. Maybe before. She asked about the clearing. The photograph. The inscription with her name and the date. He paused at that. Said those details were harder to explain medically. Said sometimes the dissociated mind leaves itself messages. Tries to communicate across the gap. The date on the photograph, 3 days from the day she found it, was the day of her first appointment with him. She had made the appointment herself, 2 weeks earlier, and had no memory of doing it. Part of her had known something was wrong long before the rest of her was ready to admit it. Part of her had been trying, desperately, silently, alone in the dark woods, to ask for help. Claire still lives in that house. She kept it. She said leaving felt like letting the wrong version of herself win. She started treatment. Slowly. The episodes reduced. Then stopped. The back door stays locked every night, and the cameras stay mounted, not out of fear anymore. Out of respect for how close she came to never finding out. She went back to the clearing once more. In daylight. Alone. The flat rock was still there. The wildflower long gone. The fabric too. But the ground inside that circular ring was still pressed flat. Still worn. She stood in the center of it for a long time. Thinking about the version of herself that had walked there in the dark. Desperate. Wordless. Leaving clues for a self that wasn't listening. Here is the question that hasn't left me since I first heard this story. How much of what we're afraid of is actually just a part of us that hasn't found its voice yet? The woods are still there. Behind the house. Every night. And the back fence gate. She never did fix the latch. She said she wanted the way back to always be open, just in case another part of her ever needed to find its way home. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next one.